Fourth video of lesson 2, project life cycle. Project life cycle is a frame or a process or a series of phases which connects the beginning and ending of a project. So project goes through series of phases, and this is represented in the form of project life cycle. So every project has a starting point and has an ending point. In general, we start here and we talk about what we are planning to do. So we plan in a very simple approach, and then we do the things. So we do doing here, and then also try to control how well we are doing, and at the end we close. So in a very simple language, this is one typical example of project life cycle. We start and then we close. Typically, the allocation of resources or the effort also initially low when we are doing planning, and it goes high while we are in an execution phase when we have a lot of people involved, and then it again reduces because at the end we just want to close the project. So says effort or expenses or an energy against the time varies typically in this format, but it also depends upon which type of project life cycle we are following. Let's look the other dimension: risk and uncertainty and cost of change. So as we move forward in our project, our risk and uncertainty starts reducing because we mitigate them or they get materialized and we manage them. Cost of change. So as we get deeper into the project, the cost of change becomes higher, because changing something at the end stage in a project scope will always be a costly affair, and changing something in the beginning of a project would be not that costly. So risk get reduced as we get deeper into the project life cycle, and cost of change starts increasing as we get further in a project life cycle. Now, project life cycle is a collection of phases. So what is phase? Phase has a distinct focus. So in a phase we do something which is distinct, which we can distinguish from other phases. For example, if we talk about typical software development life cycle, while I am doing a requirement analysis, I am focusing on identifying customer needs. While I am in a development stage, I am focusing on implementing the identified requirement by using coding. So I am coding in various tools, and finally I am showing the running software. So the focus is distinguished. So as with the phases, one phase will have an identified distinguished focus, and the phase will also give some kind of deliverable. So at a phase level, we also have some defined outputs. For example, the requirement phase will produce a requirement specification document or a system specification document. So that becomes a deliverable for that particular phase. And the development phase may result into a running software which can be deployed at the customer site. So that becomes a goal of that particular phase. So in a project, depending upon domain, now these phases are domain specific. It's not like that every project will follow a one defined phase structure. The definition of project life cycle is too much dependent on the engineering domain you are working in. In this discussion, we are talking in a term of generic project life cycles. So phases may have three types of relationship with one another. There could be a serial relationship, which means that phase 1, ending of a phase 1 may give a beginning of phase 2. Usually we have gate reviews here, or a phase end review. And the phase end review, gate review, kill gate review, these are synonym words which we use for an event, for an activities which we do at the end of the phase to learn from this and to take a feedback or adaptation for the next upcoming phases. They also provide a management, a point or a checkpoint where they can decide, do they want to continue with this project or they want to stop it because their business needs are not looking that attractive, looking at the execution status or market demand. So there could be a serial relationship between phase to phase. There could be an overlapping relationship between two phases, which means that before the ending of a phase 1, the other phase starts. So there is some percentage of overlap. For example, we say that even my requirements are not yet signed, I am still elaborating requirement, but I am done with my 50-60% of requirement understanding. Then I can start my next phase, a development phase, and in parallel, for a while, we are doing these two activities. So that could be a second type of relationship between two phases. The third relationship could be where two phases run in complete parallel. So the first case was serial, the second case was some percentage of overlapping, and parallel is like 100% overlapping. So you are doing, or few phases are running in parallel. Means you are doing two activities together, or two type of focused activities in parallel. So this activity is focusing on, say, deployment, and this activity is focusing on training or a customer support. So you may have a product deployment phase where two phases are defined, support and training, and deployment of software, technical software, and these two phases runs in parallel. Now, the PMBOK also talks about some form of life cycles. So there are 3 life cycles which are explained in PMBOK. Again, I will say these life cycle gives you a top level framework, because project life cycle is usually governed by the problem domain or by the engineering domain the project is related to. Now we have a life cycle called predictive life cycle. We have iterative incremental life cycle, and we have adaptive life cycle. Now, predictive life cycle is used for the problem areas for the project where you know about the problem well. Means you know the scope well, you know the technology well, you know the area well, things happens in more or less in a predictive fashion. But yes, there will be uncertainties. You need to, you may still follow a rolling way planning. It's not necessary to plan the complete project on one go, but the problem area is well known to you, and you can go through series of phases and at the end you deliver the software or a project. Now take an example. If it's a software example, we go through a phases like requirement analysis, a design, and then we follow a phase like development, then we follow a quality control, and then finally we say a deploy. So this is a predictive life cycle, and at the end the customer gets the deliverable. Now why it is predictive? Because here, since we know the problem domain well, we do the requirement analysis, the complete scoping of our final outcome at the initial stage of the project. There will be some level of replanning, there will be some level of change request, but since we have been through this journey before, we follow a predictive approach where we follow the sequence of engineering phases and at the end we deliver it. Now, iterative and incremental, rather than doing this in a complete series, we do into an iterations. So iterations could be of say 2 to 3 months, and this project, for example, is divided in 2 iterations. And inside these iterations, we may have phases like requirement, design, etc., etc. And at the end of this iteration, we deliver version 1, and at the end of iteration 2, we deliver version 2. So in an iterative environment, we do a problem analysis for a small part of it, and we give something which is working, and then we take a feedback. So we do a next level planning on the basis of output of our this first iterations output. Now iterations is inside the iteration, you may have all these phases. These phases may have a serial relationship. These phases may have a parallel or overlapping relationship. But at the end of iteration, you deliver something and then you replan or you think about what you want to do next. It is also possible that while you are working on a particular iteration, you are doing a planning for upcoming iteration. So this suits well when the problem domain is not very well defined. There is an uncertainties involved, and you want to see the outcome first, or the project output before you take the final call on the desired features. So for example, if you are developing a new model of a phone or a new software, rather than doing all the analysis initially, since it's a new, you are doing it for first time, you go through a one iteration and deliver something, and then you take a feedback from your respective customers and or stakeholders, and on the basis of that you decide how you want to enhance it in the next iteration and give the final deliverable. Adaptive. So the final adaptive project life cycles is again an iterative and incremental, but the iteration size is further sliced to weeks rather than months. So you have iterations of 1 to 4 weeks, and in this iteration you have a collection of requirements. So rather than doing a phase level thing, you have a collection of requirements and you try to develop them in a small slices. So you can think like in one iteration where mainly your all phase activities would be in parallel. So you might be doing requirement analysis, design, development and testing in parallel for small slices for a short duration, which is 1 to 4 weeks, and after that you deliver something which is working, and you take this feedback in account to decide what do you want to do in next iterations. So this is good when you have more uncertainties in your project. So if you have a very predictive things, you follow this. If you have a moderate predictive and some uncertainties, or a moderate balance between uncertainties and predictive, you may follow an iterative approach. And if you have more uncertainties, then the adaptive approach, which is an agile approach of doing things, may work well for you. Now again, in your organization process assets, these all methodologies should be defined well. That is why we are talking about them in a lesson 2. And while you are picking it, you know how you should be following these phases for a given methodology. Now there is one more life cycle relationship I want to talk about. That is a relationship between a project life cycle and product life cycle. Now this is again a confusion which I get from my various students. The product also has a life cycle. Means if I want to deliver something, a new product, I get an idea, then I do a business case analysis of that idea, and I find that this idea is sellable. It is in alignment with my organization's strategic goal. Strategic goal could be a profit goals or a market growth goals. And after accepting that business case, I initiate the project. And at the end of a project, I get that product and I launch it to the market. So it's like that the product life cycle may start from an idea, then we may do a business case analysis, and if this business case analysis get approved, the projects get started. And then project will go through its life cycle, either of these three or a further refined version of predictive, iterative or adaptive life cycle. End of this life cycle, we get a product which we sell in the market. So we deploy it or we sell it. So it becomes a product which is giving a profit to the company. In between, if we find that okay, we need to do some enhancement to this particular product. This product is doing good, but we want that okay, some enhancements has to be done. Then again, there would be a business case of that enhancement, and again another project can start it. So in a one product life cycle, you can have multiple projects. One project to give a beginning of that particular product, and after that could be various enhancement projects. And this product will not work forever. At the end of this product life cycle, you need to obsolete it. and bring a new product to replace this particular product. So for example, if the car manufacturer, they keep changing their products, they keep introducing new cars and they keep obsoleting the existing cars. So that way the product will end with obsolescence. And in general, for an obsolescence also, you may have a project, because that project will obsolete this particular product and help in establishing a need for upcoming product.